Oh, sir.
Hey, John Michael.
Well, I guess it is 8 in the morning, so we'll see if we have some humans here shortly.
Yeah, I mean, I just came off a meeting.
Uh,
If it's just you and me, that's fine too. We can we
First, yeah, I know it's hard to find a slot. I mean, and I know we have our back-to-back circularity stuff here Thursday.
yeah.
Uh,
I mean, it's amazing this slot's open for me because I'm booked for like 6 hours straight, and this was the only opening. So others may be in the same boat.
well, appreciate. Yeah, you're probably in the same boat as me. Just like, I don't know how much of your time you're allocating to sustainability stuff these days. I'm trying to you know, a couple hours a week is about all I can muster right now.
Yeah, I'm mostly security right now, but there is a lot of overlap.
Well, I need to pick your brain on some stuff. We should, that's unrelated to, well, I guess related to what we're doing at CDI, I guess, for sanitization and stuff. But man, there's so much coming with, I'm reviewing all the PCIe Gen 6 specs, the IDE and TDISP and there's like all this, there's just it's all that tie in with SPDM and the object transfer. I mean, like it's just never ending.
Yeah, yeah. SPDM is an interesting topic. It's like we got ahead of the game, and then nothing, and then they're still debating a lot of stuff in the security group over attestation. So I've made the mistake before of being a first adopter and then waiting 3 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, right. Morning, David.
Good morning, everyone.
Well, I did send out a reminder to the group, but maybe not the broader sustainability org. So next time we'll see. I know probably going to be a short meeting anyways. We have a bunch of sustainability meetups next week at the regional summit. So we'll probably be able to churn through some of the topics.
and John Michael, I forget, have I connected you with Hugo Bergman on the Seagate side?
Yes, yeah, I'll ping him for sure. 'Cause you said he'll be out there, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That'd be great. I'll connect with him while I'm out there.
yeah. He's in the spreadsheet.
Well, at least while I have you guys, we can quickly start getting the minutes and stuff cleaned up so we can like we really met. Um, so what we had last time was just kind of summarizing what had been done so far. Right? We have the sustainability white paper that has a section on circularity. We have the media sanitization white paper, which Ari and I are both co-authors on, so I don't think you need a lot of input there. But we have a section in there about how do you potentially account for carbon and circularity. Um, Now that section came off a conversation from Meta that I had. Because originally when we wrote this white paper, that section basically said, yeah, you can't. There's no way to do carbon accounting for circularity, and Meta suggested I read this white paper um, and kind of look at this comparative and consequential approaches. Like which is like comparing versus a LCA of like a recertified product or the looking at the impact difference of use. So this was kind of like our key uh, approach to this carbon accounting and circularity. And then we have the design for circularity guide, which doesn't have much about carbon disclosure. It's really just the strategies for circularity. Um, yeah, and then these are all just other things we're going on. So I think last time we met it was just a kind of I think everybody agreed on, hey, we want to do this. It makes sense to try to like our goal is to incentivize circularity. So we do that by making it so we can incentivize the carbon accounting so that people can take a benefit for the circularity and use extension instead of um, by amortizing it longer than say, for instance, the warranty period. And then how do we do that, especially if there's a second user or second owner?
Exactly. And by the way, go back up a second. LCA guidelines.
Oh yeah.
I've been frustrated because I have a set from our consultant, but they're under strict NDA.
Mhm.
And then another company called MakerSite has it publicly posted on their website, and it's actually fairly close to others. I should share that because there are, and they see. I'd like you to review them, but the LCA guidelines seem to be something we might use as a guide. And the company is called makersite.io.
Cool. I know the iMasons, they're doing some comparisons on different methodologies for LCAs. This is one of the ones from the minutes of the last equipment working group meeting. Doing this was the EIO, like where they're comparing a life cycle assessment based off the cost and see if that's comparable to a full life cycle assessment and stuff like that. So they're also working on, iMasons. They're also working on an updated LCA guidelines for equipment manufacturers and LCA guidelines for equipment manufacturers and data centers.
Hey folks, if
Oh,
you folks saw, hey, good morning. If you folks saw like the call out in last main OCP sustainability meeting, we are actually trying to put together a work stream that would be for LCA methodology standardization or to help build a PCR. And there are a couple of entities who've shown interest. There is Sustainable Solution Corp, Corporation, and IMEC, who have sort of shown interest to be a part and contribute to that. And I think these firms are actually deep into how the LCA is done. So maybe we'll be able to get through that. The concentration of the OCP and iMason's combined work stream, although they are doing comparison, but the main task for them is building the disclosure format.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And MakerSite, Shruti, the reason I took a meeting with them was because they do LCAs
I
for
know.
Microsoft products, including the service.
I know exactly what MakerSite does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and what's your take on MakerSite?
What's my take?
Yeah, I don't know, for example, if MakerSite does anything on the cloud business, which is really the folks I interface with.
I mean, essentially, they are sort of helping any kind of device estimation. You can apply it across. I don't quite know enough to comment on if there is a difference in how accurate they are when you apply it to a cloud device versus maybe any other kind of device, but I would think you can apply it across, right?
Yeah, their methodology certainly seems to apply to like something like a hard drive.
Yeah.
So I would imagine at the device level, they're, I don't know if the Azure guys use them or not. But I found their stuff to be pretty consistent with other stuff I've read under NDA, and maybe one of many places to start. But I agree, iMasons may be the gold standard.
Yeah, that was just to let you folks know that this particular problem that always comes up in discussions, we're trying to push through to get something going for that.
Oh, I'm on mute here.
No,
So
the attendees, I think everyone but David, you could just use our first name.
Awesome.
Well, glad I got. Well, thank you guys for coming. We'll keep reminding folks, and I don't know. I mean, I know this. There's never going to be never going to be a time that works for everybody, but we'll just continue to try to get as much time as we can and pass downs from the other work groups. The I mentioned it last time, but I did follow up with Sari. They have a um they had this report basically that says they're going to start this that they want to do this as well as that reporting carbon in the value chain. They're calling it just like a broader, ESG reporting for sustainable electronics does this R2 spec, which is one of the main ITAD specs for reuse in recertifying electronics and but all the way from consumer electronics to data center stuff. But they did have so I did mention I talked to Corey, who's the director, and they're looking for more customers in their TAC. The TAC is like their group, the technical advisory committee that's going to create these standards. So I told them like the goal, we're doing this. Ari and I are doing this through the nonprofit Circular Drive Initiative for storage, and we're also, this area is also working on this. We don't want to like have a bunch of different takes on. And of course, we talked about like we want to be aligned with the greenhouse gas reporting standards and EPA and all the other things that are talking about the same topic. So yeah, I'm going to do my best to see if we can just make sure we're all aligned as these are being developed. But they have some big names on their end customers ready: Google, Lenovo, RLA, Reverse Logistics Groups, RLG, Samsung, Starbucks. So could be interesting. Yeah, basically they're just getting started and trying to find people. They said they had one meeting and to kick it off. But yeah, so I will be at least following their updates and seeing if they bringing whatever they're working on in this work group as well. So. Shruti, was there anything in the other work groups? I know we're kind of dependent on, I know the supplier carbon label standardization. I thought there was some efforts there to talk about, I think the latest is just kind of about reporting, which kind of goes into the same bucket of carbon reporting. Yeah, why don't you give us an update on, I guess that's easier. Why don't you give us an update on what's going on there that will impact this one?
So, I'm trying to sort of think through this. Why are we thinking that we would have dependency on that?
So if we're going to come up with a methodology to amortize the carbon, over, say, for instance, like a specific use period, or to be able to transfer that to a second user or something, we have dependency on the actually first user reporting the carbon correctly, which I think we have discovered is not being done today very well in the ICT industry.
Mm-hmm.
So, we can't take a number and divide it up and amortize it if the number's not right in the first place. And I know that right is a subjective here, but that's kind of my take on this, is that they're all kind of intertwined, right? So we'll be creating these robust LCA methodologies, and then while we're doing that, we want to say, hey, here's our input into how circularity impacts that. But
Okay.
we don't want to reinvent the wheel on how to report. We're going to be leveraging the other work groups for best practices in reporting for carbon, embodied carbon in the ICT industry. Which
Okay.
I
So,
believe. Yep, go ahead.
so maybe how we can do this is because, that work group will also, it'll take a while still in order to, formalize even like an initial draft of how the initial owner is, how the manufacturer is actually reporting the entire carbon. So they'll take a while to formulate even the initial draft. So how about we sort of consider that, um, you know, that will be right and sort of take it from there. Like make, of course, that has to be right, but make an assumption about the fact that that will be set when these rules will be applied ahead. So currently, let me tell you, yeah, they have done certain, like some comparisons, and they have a like pretty good list of attributes that affect the LCAs. They are to start listing what would be, in the disclosure. Um, and they have looked at some of the, existing LCA methods that are existing in the industry right now. Some that part is also in progress. That's where they are right now. So I'll say they are still in their background work steps still. Does that make sense? Like they have
Yeah, I think
essentially looked at some of the LCAs existing in industry and then listed some of the attributes that make a difference to the LCA. That's sort of where they are right now. And I think they will take some time to actually get to any initial draft of theirs also.
that makes sense.
So
Um, I mentioned, we do have some, like at least from the last meeting, we decided that we wanted to, that we did want to have a goal of targeting some kind of phase one guideline, which is a white paper that would suggest here's all the ways that you could report carbon in circularity. And then going from and then having something towards the end of the year that's more of a guideline that aligns, that's something we can give to folks to actually implement. But
mhm.
so yeah, this is where we spent the most of the time in the last meeting, which is, reuse is one of the things we're trying to accelerate. I guess my spelling here is great. Um, so this transfer of ownership, how do we split up or rebate the carbon impact from embodied carbon across multiple uses? And currently there's no methodologies to do this, although I mentioned we did look at this in the data sanitization white paper from Meta. The two approaches we looked at were the comparative approach and consequential approach. So basically being able to do an LCA on a recertified product, and it should have, for instance, less embodied carbon because it's a recertified product and it didn't have to get manufactured again. And then you can do a comparison of those two LCAs and look at the delta of the greenhouse gas impact. And then the other one, this consequential approach, which is the result of a given decision or intervention saying, okay, we are going to implement reuse or implement a extended use period, and what's the impact of that? But this one is, either of these don't have any guidance on how you would actually, negate carbon. I think that was interesting. I mean, this just came out like literally this morning. I don't know if you guys have, probably
Sorry,
not.
whose guidelines were you sharing on screen just a minute back? Like,
This is our data sanitization white paper.
oh, from that. Okay.
Yeah, and
Okay.
this was 2022. Gosh, boy,
Mhm.
crazy. All right, it's almost 2 years. We made a lot of progress since then. But yeah, so there is a section in that white paper called Greenhouse Gas Accounting for Circular Business Models. Jordan from Meta was the one who sent me this white paper and said, this is a good place to start.
Mhm.
So that's how I landed on this. I think, yeah, there we go.
Yeah, John Michael, we should consider a new version or an updated version of the white paper at some point.
I think that would be a great idea.
With an audience in mind with more security focus.
Yeah. I do really like that idea. So let's see. So how do we want to proceed? I have some thoughts on the way Apple's reporting circularity stuff, which I think is consistent with others that are doing this in the industry right now. We can go there, or we can kind of spend some time. Yeah, however we want to do this.
So I was sort of thinking, let's do two parallel things. One is what you are sort of saying, maybe take Apple or whatever as an industry example and see how how they can report, and then into that go case by case, like if there is reuse within Apple, if there is reuse by a secondary owner, if there is recycled and second life, etc. But on the side, I was also thinking that this work stream is the closest to the speaker we have actually invited in the next session. And that speaker is the director of GHG protocol. And we sort of, it would be good if we have some questions or suggestions or things that we would want to understand how we can collaborate or help GHG protocol. It would be good if we sort of build that list of items to bring up with the speaker. And I sort of thought, since this work stream is closest to that, probably this work stream is the one who can give that a thought before the session.
I think that's a great idea, and I think that having questions in advance would be outstanding, because I worry that we will pepper him and go over time. And the other question I have, Shruti, is it all right if I invite other folks from Seagate to attend this one, given the speaker? We have a large sustainability org here, but I don't know if that would be overloading the meeting or not.
I mean, that should be fine. Seagate is a member, so technically all employees of the member company are allowed. So
okay, thank you.
So yeah, maybe we can sort of prep for what is it that we would want to bring up and ask from that speaker.
Oh, transfer of ownership, we are working that out in the security group. And there was a talk at the OCP Global Summit. And it's somewhat simpler for storage devices than perhaps some other devices. And I can go into more detail later.
Yeah. So in that sense of questions, I think the first one is like, what is the greenhouse gas protocol's current thinking on carbon accounting and circularity? Which I think we know. I think we know the answer, which is not really included, right? Second question is, how do we account for multiple users of a device, transfer of ownership? I guess this is our current thought process is we split the embodied carbon between the first and second user, amortize over the use period life of the device.
So is that our initial thought? I mean, I've been thinking more one or the other.
Yeah, or we can give second user gets to sell a product that has lower embodied carbon, new LCA.
And honestly, from my perspective, the first owner, if we want to incentivize circularity, the hardest thing is to get the first owner to not shred a device. So if I had a preference, it would be the first owner gets the carbon credits and the second owner does not. But I'm thinking from an incentive-based approach based on my experience.
Yeah, because second owner is probably also going to get incentivized monetarily, because maybe this reused device is going to cost them less.
Yeah, economics 101. Yeah.
Yeah, so that will be, but so my thought process is the dollar value going to be a lot smaller? Then that means the dollar value is not an incentive for the first owner. Then carbon has to be the incentive for the first owner.
Yeah, and that's kind of what at least what we've heard pretty directly from the hyperscalers are like, it's nice to get some value recovery, but we'd like the impact on the carbon.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good both for carbon credits and honestly for PR and for meeting the moonshot goals that almost every company has at that level. And the secondary user is less likely to see that as a value.
Okay. So, okay, so first question, what is the current guidelines on circularity and, in the GHG protocol, which we should do some homework before then, but I don't believe that there's much. And then I think our question is, hey, we believe that there's this, it's not fair to the first user if they use the device for say 3 to 4 years and then sell it, or incentivize circularity and reuse it for another company, and then they use it for another 3 to 4 years. Then why does the first company have to take the entirety of the embodied carbon? That doesn't necessarily make sense. So is there a way to split that up between the first and second user? Our ideas are that you could, our current ideas is we could take the average use period of these types of, and this is where I'll get into like what Apple is doing, which I think is kind of interesting. Just might be a good play. So they're calling this extended use period product longevity, and their approach to circularity makes sense, right? This product longevity, durability, repair access, software updates, refurbishment programs. But they go through here and talk about iPhone 7 was introduced in 2016, still has value in 2024. All the stuff that they're doing to improve circularity on the iPhone, improve durability and repairability to enhance the iPhone's longevity. So they're using the word longevity here. We were using extended use period. I don't know, if there's something unique there that we want to use, but they're having this big focus on refurbishment reuse. Now they don't talk about carbon recovery; they talk about material recovery. The amount 400K megatons of scrap, 40,000 metric tons of e-waste and scrap. But yeah, I don't know. It's again, so I think that most of the public company reporting is consistent with what we have done so far, which is we have some guidelines on best practices for circularity. We know how to talk about it. We know it's the right thing to do. We know we want to design for disassembly and reuse and improve longevity and use period. But I think the gap here is like, how do we get the first user to be incentivized, especially on products that have high embodied carbon? Maybe that's another note. Oh, and by the way, yeah, David have a comment. I don't know if David, if he had to hop off. Oh, oops.
Yeah, he dropped.
Oh, okay. But yeah, he said, be helpful to include the social impact of LCA into the updated white paper. This could be used to relate to reuse of nonprofit charitable education, how the impact calculated could be device. Yeah, I do love that. And Leslie, I know, welcome. We didn't get to meet you properly, but hello. Am I saying that right, Leslie?
Yes.
Oh.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Hello. Yeah, Ari, I also found some interesting stuff in this deck for us for the next meeting. which is carbon footprint by product. And they list the difference between the 256 gig and the 512 gig, and the 512 gig versus 1 terabyte iPhone. Those are the only differences. So we can take the difference and look at the carbon impact of the flash on
Oh,
the
interesting. Yeah. Oh, it's kind of like a hidden LCA. Yeah, I like it.
Yep. So I did the math there, and it was So this. Anyways, we'll go there next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we have some questions, right? I think the main are that like, hey, we think this makes sense, because we're also hearing this, maybe this is maybe a statement. We're saying, hey, we've heard from customers and partners the value recovery is not enough to fully incentivize these programs for reuse and circularity, especially on products with high embodied carbon. That have very long use periods. Right? So, hey, these products get used for 5 to 10 years. They're like a robust secondary market for used CPUs, used memory. Like these have huge high embodied carbon. Why is it that the first buyer has to take the entire thing under scope 3? Right?
Yeah, if you look at the investment, and we don't have the carbon numbers yet, but we've done some estimates of what it takes to create, as far as the CapEx, what it takes to create, a terabyte of flash storage versus a terabyte of HDD storage. And if the CapEx relates to, and I think it does somewhat correlate with the carbon intensity of the manufacturing process, it is a very big delta, and it kind of maps to what we've heard in like the Dirty Secrets paper.
Yeah. So here's my math. Let's see, 107 minus 83. So 24 kilograms of CO2 divided by 512 gigabytes, 0.046 kilograms of CO2e per gigabyte of flash. And so this 2024 is going to ship 500 exabytes of flash. So 500 exabytes times 1,000 for petabytes times 1,000 for terabytes times 1,000 for gigabytes. So 23 billion kilograms of CO2e divided by 1,000 for metric tons. I think my math is correct here, right?
Unless you missed a zero somewhere, yeah.
23 million. So the entire flash industry could have an impact as high as 23 million metric tons of CO2e, which if you look at, their scope 3 numbers, right? Even, a tire company like Apple, their scope 3 numbers is 15 million. So I think that 23 million for the flash industry is probably directionally accurate. It's probably as close as we're going to get.
Yeah, I'll send you John Michael. I'll send you the paper we just released. I think yesterday or the day before. A blog post that I contributed to from my senior VP. But again, we're having a hard time getting the carbon data from LCAs that we need to really to do more than what you're doing right here, where we can see numbers, we can estimate it, but I'm just not seeing LCAs from SSD vendors unless I'm missing one.
No, they're not. They're not releasing them publicly. And I think we just discovered, for my back of the napkin math, why.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
but
they're cool about it, and SSDs have an important place in storage, but it's certainly not a story they want to tell right now.
No, and I think that's the important part about what we need to do in OCP is that like we understand that some of these products have high embodied carbon and aren't going to change for a while because you can't just move all the fabs in the world to renewable energy overnight. It's not going to happen. So until that happens, one of the effective strategies we can use is to increase the use period of the device and incentivize circularity. But if we do this, we want to figure out a way that we can incentivize by amortizing the carbon over the entire use period.
Yeah.
So I think we have a pretty crisp problem statement and desire, Shruti, for our question for this guy. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, the questions seem good. For these questions, do you folks also want to think about what are our thoughts about replies to these questions? Just because I think one thing that we are trying to do by asking these questions is sort of get a little feel of what is their opinion, or if there is any discussion that's happened within GHG, where do they stand on these kind of questions. So if we are getting to hear that, just to keep a reference in our mind, what are our current thoughts for these questions?
That's a good, yeah.
Oh, you're saying like what is our approach and recommendation?
Yeah, for each of these questions. And that's not in recommendation means I'm not saying that we will publish that recommendation, but just to have a reference when we hear their thoughts. I think we'll sort of be able to figure out, oh, does that match?
Maybe a table format.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Because I think what we want to say is like our view is that if a supplier like Apple takes 15 million metric tons of CO2e on their scope 3, and 9.4 of that is from manufacturing goods and services, like if so they're again, if they're buying this. See, how do we frame this? So they're a user of these services, they're buying these, and then their product use of sold products is probably the oh gosh, something weird's happening here. Is the probably electricity use, but like we want to say, okay, if a data center is buying a bunch of devices, but then they end up only using them for 3 years and then selling them, well, shouldn't they get a rebate on this scope 3 because they're already spending real money and real carbon credits to offset these numbers? So that doesn't really seem fair. If they're doing the right thing, which is not just throwing in the garbage, but giving it to a second user, shouldn't we be able to take that number and reduce it because now it's going to another user, and then that user would take it on the scope 3. So it's like the law of thermodynamics, right? It's like it's like the carbon's not lost. It didn't just get deleted. It didn't get deleted from their scope 3. It just got moved to another company's because they're the ones using the product now. If that made a little bit of sense.
It does, and one thing with Apple, or at least with like my carrier, Verizon, is they have a very aggressive, return your phone and get a new phone and extend the contract program. And I assume that part of the incentive for that on Apple's part anyway is being a more sustainable company and meeting their goals.
Yeah.
And again, I can't stress enough the need for incentives on the first owner.
Great. Well, I'll see if we can come. Let's see. Can we come up? I think we can come up with some kind of table that is, hey, these are the options. This is the one that we recommend that has the best, that at least our OCP partners and customers all think that is the most reasonable methodology. And then our suggestions for how that would work. I think we can come up with a table that has that.
Yeah, I have too many ideas for columns on that table.
Yeah, it might be as simple as like, let's start here.
I mean, I think we need to have our recommendation and then something along, I mean, we probably need to start with a few principles. And then which of those principles is each of our recommendations supporting? And it could be multiple, of course.
So, option one is current, no reporting, no impact for circular. Um, let's see, value recovery. I guess we should say this is like from perspective. This is data center operator. First user takes 100% of body carbon. ICT. So maybe this is the problem statement, right? Right. ICT industry and devices have high embodied carbon, so there's a large impact for the first user to take the entire brunt of the scope 3. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I like this. It wasn't exactly what I was thinking of. I was thinking more along the lines of Shruti, each of those questions we have being in the first column. And that this is almost like a flip of the table I was thinking of. But keep going because this is useful.
So like the second option would be amortization. Why do I want to spell it with two M's? This is one M, right?
I don't know. That's one word I don't have a problem with. I have a lot of problems with the doubles.
Oh man, yeah, if I didn't have Grammarly, I quite literally couldn't spell anything. So Think. Okay, perspective is, we'll say data center operator again.
So I take it you weren't a spelling bee guy, John Michael.
No, I'm a math guy. uh, let's see. Data center operator. Okay, description. Understand. Let's say amortize embodied carbon over device use period life. Say it nice and
And
simple.
Yeah. Do we want
do
to?
you mean,
Go ahead, Shruti.
I was just going to ask, do you mean, it's basically equally amortized over the use period? And under this option of amortization, what does it mean about the allocation of the carbon? Are we saying it's amortized over the total number of years that it had first life and second life? And then whoever was using it in first life takes ownership of that. Whoever was using it in second life takes ownership of that. Like, there can be a lot of versions of amortization.
I think we should use years. I was going to say, it could be terabytes written, but the second life is likely going to be less intensive. But I still think that the years of a device life cycle, and we may want to estimate on that. So that's actually a really big topic.
Yeah, and I think the way you would do this is say like, hey, we bought a bunch of memory, but we only plan on using it for 3 years. So and memory on average lasts for 10 years. So we're going to take, 3/10 of the embodied carbon and put that as our scope 3. That this would be this would be that the description of that. Problems. Proper downstream reporting.
I think this is one of those where we're going to need to use like an LCA methodology that uses estimates rather than actual reporting.
And then, other problems, no consensus on product use period.
Yeah. Or use period, or you could just say on use percentage. Because it could be time, it could be something else.
So yeah, obviously incentive here is
Lower price.
incentivize buyers of recertified equipment, because they can, if they're buying recertified equipment, then they can have low carbon equipment. I'm sorry, what did you say, Ari?
Oh, I think the main incentive there is actually simply cost. If we're incentivizing the seller, then there's the supply demand curve is going to be in favor of the buyer. But they can still market that they're using recertified products that can help them meet goals potentially, depending on who the buyer is.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll keep thinking about this. We'll kind of build this out until we have like, here's all our options, and then we'd have one and we say, hey, this is the one we recommend because it has the best incentives, it's best for all these different users, whatever. I think that's a reasonable way to think about this. Cool. Well, and we're probably kind of running low on time here. But you said this meeting is next month, Shruti?
Oh, will be good if I unmute and talk. Yeah, it's on May 8th.
May.
May 8th, yeah.
Okay. Oh wow, look at that. Great. Well, we'll continue to think about this offline and come back. But yeah, I don't think there's a ton of options, but I think we should give examples of practical examples, like we said. Okay, hey, data center buys the equipment, they use it for 3 years, and then they sell it. Why do they have to take the embodied carbon, for the entirety of the device? Then if they do that, that's going to start messing up incentives for, the offsets. Is kind of our current thinking. But all right, well, thank you, Shruti. I'll send this out with on the little OCP mailing list thing. Whoop. My Zoom gonna explode here? No. Okay. Yeah, and yeah, I think once a month is reasonable. I know Ari and I are slammed these days, but Shruti, thanks for keeping us on track.
No worries at all. And I mean, I think the table that you just started putting together is great. Like once we get, some feedback, opinion from that session, we can actually go on expanding the table in order to see like what are all the possible, possible options and nuances that have to go into it.
Great. Well, all right.
Well,
Thanks
no,
again.
Michael, Shruti, I have one question for actually for this group, but for others as well is, we're keenly aware that for storage, security is the biggest barrier. And Brian Kelly, on the 13th of March gave a excellent presentation. But there are other perspectives on that as well. On the new implementations coming from OCP security and other groups. Do we have a good slot for where we have discussions around device security and not just it's not just hard drives, although that's a big part of it, or storage devices, I should say. I feel like we discuss it here and there, but we don't really have a project that has it as a subcomponent. I'm not sure where that would live.
Okay. So
yeah, I guess my feedback
are
is,
you saying to have a slot in one of the main OCP sustainability meetings?
Okay. And
So I'm
once a
asking.
quarter is probably a good time to revisit it, and we can have guest speakers as well.
Sorry, maybe I'm cutting out, but I was just clarifying, are you asking for, like, can we use a slot in the main OCP sustainability meeting, or are you already thinking of it as one entire work stream or something that we need to start off?
I was looking for ideas, but I think your thought of having it as like periodically, like once a quarter, maybe part of the main meeting. And it can be something we have a small internal group that presents, or it could be a guest speaker. But I'm open to ideas. I mean, we have a lot of groups already, so I don't think we need one just around this.
but yeah, like I said already, I think you're the glue, right? We're the folks that are part of this sustainability and security, and I'm part of the sustainability and storage project and trying to be the glue there. Although Shruti, like we really got to get Ross and Lee starting to think more about sustainability stuff in the OCP NVMe SSD spec. That's a topic for another day, but like it's not a priority for them. So
Yeah, I know it's not. And I was essentially thinking that, just like we call folks from other projects, we call them in one of our monthly meetings and also make this a major discussion in that same monthly meeting.
yeah, and I did get the background on why that is. It's mostly a human resource thing, right? Ross is like the only guy at Meta doing Flash, and like for strategy stuff. So he's just got a lot of stuff going on. Like my talk for the OCP storage May summit for FTP was approved, but not for sustainability. So I'll take that as and we were a sponsor for the new company, by the way. I did recently join FADU doing SSD planning stuff. So more about that later.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. How many companies do you work for now? Because I'm losing track.
I'm trying to just right. I still technically advise for Chia, which is why I'm able to represent them in a Circular Drive initiative. But yeah, hopefully just one. So, yeah, my personal like free time is with it basically effectively zero. But right, I got to run, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, John Michael.
Bye bye.
Thank you, folks.